What is a man?
A man is first understanding what it means to have service before self. I'm a military guy. I was in the military for 10 years. And so one of the core principles that we learn, and we actually take an oath, is to support and defend the Constitution. And we're willing to actually give our lives for people we'll never meet, that will never appreciate the sacrifice that we're willing to make, yet we do it anyway. And so it's subscribing to being part of something that's much bigger than yourself. And that's the way I look at my life, is that I'm part of something that's much bigger than the me culture that we see today, where it's all about myself.
Yeah, that's right.
Is everything I do, the way I raise my children, the way I act as a man, is because I'm part of something larger than myself. The second part is also being committed to self-improvement. I'm really big in saying, hey, we're not perfect, we're all fallible, we'll all come short of the glory of God. And it's up to us as men to constantly look at ways of improving ourselves.
Are you a man?
I believe so. I'm trying.
Would you? Would your wife say that you are a man?
I believe she would, yeah.
She will. Does she respect you?
Absolutely.
Did your mother respect you? Do your mother respect your father?
Absolutely.
You have written that you are redefining what it means to be a dad. When I was growing up, it was understood what the father role was and why we needed a father. That doesn't seem to be understood in today's America.
Absolutely, and I absolutely agree.
Are you the head of your wife?
I would say as spiritual head, yes, that's what God commands us to be. So I am the spiritual head of my wife. I look at our relationship as more of a partnership. There's strengths that she has that I don't have, and there's strengths that I have that she doesn't have. So when it comes to actually running our household, I say that, and I think that's a very critical point of our relationship and marriage in general, is that it's a partnership.
Will you say that you're the spiritual head? What does that mean?
That means it's my responsibility, or I see it as my responsibility. God has given me to ensure that my family adhere to God's word, that we attend church, that we act and behave in a way that is morally prescribed in the Bible.
And the term partner, she is my partner, that was created by far left, godless, God-hated, man-hated liberal women and radical homosexuals. Why do you use that in your marriage? Because before it was husband and wife, it wasn't partner.
The term for me is actually, I define it probably a little bit different than the folks that you say you define it. You know, marriage was a commitment. I made a vow to my wife. She made a vow to me. That then instilled what I believe is to be a partnership.
If you guys are partners, what happens when there needs to be a decision made and she doesn't like the decision that you have to make? How do you deal with that?
I have to be honest with what my weaknesses are and work on those. And in the process of working on those, if she has the ability or the facilities to step in and be sort of that help there, that's where I rely on her to be. And so when we do get in those situations, I have to take a very honest look and say, do I have what I need? Do I have the information? Do I have the ability to make these sort of decisions? Or is there some part of information or anything like that she has that she can bring to that? And so when there is a time to make a decision that maybe she doesn't agree with or anything like that, depending on what it is, we can pray about it, usually if it's a financial or something like that.
Let's say you wanted to buy a car, and, oh no, she wanted to buy a car.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, we're not going to get a car. We can't afford it.
Yeah.
She's like, but I work and I do and I do.
Well, first of all, we never have those kind of conversations.
You can't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And you say, what?
Yeah, well, we never have those kind of conversations. So in that type of scenario, which we actually did buy a car very recently, it becomes more of a discussion. It's like, we look at the circumstances and say, hey, this car is old, we need a new car. Is this the right time to do it?
But what happens though if you insist that we're not going to get it?
I don't think that would never, that's not how I would do it.
You would never insist that we're never going to
do that.
Why not? Even if, let's say you can't afford it, she is insistent on getting it anyway, would you put your...
See, to me, that's not equally yoked. So that's why I say equally yoked is a very core fundamental
Define
thing.
equally yoked for me.
For me, equally yoked, see, there's a traditional sort of what everybody commonly believes in the parable from the Bible, where you have two oxen who are being led by God, and they have the wooden yoke around them, and they're both being led out in the pasture. But I take it probably a step further and say that what's important for me is not only that we're equally yoked, that we're tied together, but we're also facing the same direction. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So I would wouldn't be with somebody who says, yeah, I want to be equally yoked, but I want to go over there. I want to be equally yoked with
But you
somebody.
and your
and
wife,
be,
you do argue and disagree on things.
absolutely, sure.
How do you deal with that? Do you tell them to be quiet?
No, absolutely. I mean,
You
so
do
first
tell
let me
them
qualify. The first thing is she's an attorney. So that's the first thing I have to qualify. So my arguments better be on point. So I have to have point and counterpoint arguments. But more importantly, again, depending on what it is, if it's a very fundamental issue, we'll pray about it, absolutely. And we'll pray that God will bring us to a point of understanding. But again, part of what's so fundamental, and I can't stress it enough because I tell young couples who are getting ready to be married, is how important it means and what that means to be equally yoked. Because my wife and I won't have a disagreement that, or at least we haven't in the 18 years, that has been that sort of fundamental where I'm seeing one thing one way and she's seeing it completely different. Usually it's varying shades of gray. So in the example you gave of the car, it's more of a question of what car do we get, not do we need a car or we can't afford a car. So
Have you ever had to say no to your wife? You can't do this?
no.
You never had
not
to
that
say
I
that?
not that I know
Have
of.
she said it to you?
No.
No?
No.
Do you tell your wife your problems?
Oh, absolutely.
You do?
Yeah.
I noticed that a lot of men tell their wives their problems. And that is new to me.
Well, let me qualify it. Let me qualify that because it's not
I
it's
knew
not
you-
that it's not that she's
I
my
knew.
therapist or anything like
Right.
that, because I don't put that responsibility. I
Yeah.
put that responsibility on God. So when it's usually a problem, it's more like, hey, I spoke to God about this and here's what I'm feeling God's telling me, and it's more of that and more of a discussion. I'm not saying, hey babe, I got this problem, help me figure it out. I wouldn't want to put that burden on her.
I personally think that a man should never, ever, ever tell a wife his problems or his girlfriend before marriage. And the reason I feel that way because women are not strong enough to handle that. And it's her responsibility to look up to the husband as the husband looked to Christ. So why would you tell her anything like that at all?
No, I don't subscribe to that at all.
Why not?
Well, because the way I look at my marriage is it's a partnership. Well, we use that word, we see that definition a little bit differently.
But what can your partner do about your problems?
Well, again,
she's
and
a
I go
weaker
back-
vessel.
Yeah,
you
I
do
go back-
agree she's a weaker vessel than you, right?
No, I don't agree with that at all.
You
either.
think your wife is as strong as you are?
Well, that's what I said before. I said I'm comfortable in the fact that I'm not perfect, that I'm fallible, and that I have weaknesses and I have strengths.
And you don't let her know those weaknesses, though, right?
I think through the course of marriage, you understand those weaknesses. Again, I'm equally yoked with her. So if I have a bum leg and she's got a stronger leg, I'm going to rely on that stronger leg. There's nothing I can do about that bum leg. I can't make that leg stronger. I want to rely on her to have that stronger leg in those particular circumstances. So I'm secure enough to understand that I'm not perfect and that I make mistakes and that there's things that I'm weak on that I'm working on, and vice versa. And so I rely on her in those areas especially where I know she has a strength. Given her profession and what she's done in her life.
Well, let me ask this way. When you are emotionally weak, would you let her know that too?
Again, it depends on what it is. If I think she has a strength,
that's a
she
yes,
lost.
you might-
I'll give you a good example. She lost a father. I haven't. Right?
Right.
If I, God forbid, ever lose my father anytime soon, and I don't know how to do with that, again, I have that relationship with God that we're going to ask for healing. But I'm going to ask her, hey, how did you cope with losing your father? How
Really?
were you? Absolutely.
Where's the man in the family? Because the man is the strength of the family, right?
Yeah. No.
And so if you're displaying all this weakness and sharing it with your wife, where's the manness? Where's
Right.
the father?
Again,
where's the strength?
I don't share that with my wife to be my therapist. I
know,
share
but
it
you
to
share
let
it,
her to know.
period.
Yeah, I share it to let her to rely on any strengths that she has to help me through it. My relationships with my God. So in order
So
to
if you
come
have
through
God,
it,
why do you need her strength?
because I know that there's things that God hasn't revealed to me yet. I know that there's weaknesses. I know that there's things that I'm not strong in, that I haven't attained a certain level of comfortability with.
But why not just go directly to God?
No, I do, and
Instead
that's what
of
I'm
even
saying.
sharing it with your wife. And if you need someone to talk to your father. You say your father, you respect your father,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. And I do.
So talk to him
No, and I
instead
do.
of your wife.
No, I do. I think there's a lot of things I share with my dad to get his perspective.
Right.
But again, because of the level of respect I have for my wife, and because I know the strengths, and you don't have the benefit of knowing her, but she's a remarkable woman. But
That's what all weak men say. No, I'm kidding.
yeah, you haven't met her. If you did, I mean, we could spend a whole hour talking about her. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from, and I.
Where am I
think-
coming from?
I think you're coming from, for me, it's a very sort of what I call, old school, for lack of a better way of looking at things. And that's really we're redefining finding dad comes from, is it's recognizing that we're part of this world. We're in the 21st century. We don't prescribe to it, but there's ways of working where maybe in the past they had, or in a different way of thinking. Maybe there's ways to improve upon that. Maybe there's ways to do things differently that raise healthy children, that make ourselves even better than when we were.
But redefining men and dads and turning them into like an emotional woman is going to only make the situation worse. Whereas when we had fathers who were men, and you can tell the difference between the father and the mother, then you had stronger families. But if the men start to act like the women in the family, you're going to have a weaker family, and the kids are not going to respect the father.
My father lost his father at a young age. There was also, along with that, a detachment, right? There was, the father worked and he came home and he had his scotch and that was it. There wasn't that emotional relationship. And I believe that severely impacted a lot of people that I choose to rectify, right? My daughter needs to understand what it means to be a man, and she needs to understand, and I want her to find somebody who emulates my behavior, and I want her to be the person that I emulate. You don't get that from a father who just comes home and has scotch.
But if you're an emotional person like your wife, their mother, they're not going to get the father's love. They're just going to get the mother's love coming through you.
I completely disagree with that. And it's a different way, right? The mother's love is completely different. There's no way I can love my children the way that their mother loves them. I love them the way I love them, and they'll understand that.
Is there a difference between men and women?
Absolutely.
What's the difference?
I think that the difference that I kind of prescribe to is and really, and that's kind of where my blog is kind of going, is that for too long I think men have looked at this sort of way when I said the boys will be boys, that we're this infallible being, that we've transcended to this level where what we say goes, right? I grew up with that. Dad says goes. Well, yeah, but who's checking dad? We're dad's not perfect. Dad doesn't always.
Why does he need someone to check him?
Because he's not perfect. Because he's fallible. Because he makes mistakes.
His relationship or correction would come from God and not some human being.
Well, if you believe that way, if you
don't believe that way?
I absolutely believe that my correction comes from God, but I also believe that that I'm not perfect, and maybe I don't always heed the word of God, or maybe I don't always listen to that still voice telling me the direction to go, and that's why I believe God brought me a wife. So you talk about the difference between men and women. I think in a lot of ways that's where my wife has been such a blessing to me, is because her personal relationship with God is probably even more developed than mine, where she can hear that small voice from God and say, you know what, here's what God's telling us
That's
to do.
sad. I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, well, like I said,
what you're telling me is that your wife is closer to God than you are, and it's supposed to be the other way around.
Absolutely.
You should be closer to God, and then your wife should be closer to you, and God is working through her, through you. Yeah. Not the other way around.
Yeah, well, that's your opinion.
Do you disagree with that?
I do. I do. And I believe that part of my job, and that when we talk about the continuous improvement, is I need to work on establishing even a more closer relationship to God.
How is it that your wife is closer to God than you are? That doesn't make sense.
I think, well, no, it would make sense if you understand our background a little bit more. I think she's gone through a lot of things that I just haven't gone through in my life, where God has played an instrumental role. We talked about the losing of her father, and I just haven't had to go through that. What
did
you
you
see
have
about
sex with her before marriage?
I did.
You did.
Yeah,
you were
I did.
A sinner.
Yeah. We all fall short, right? But I mean,
do you recommend that men should have sex with their potential wife before marriage, or should they wait until after marriage?
That's a very personal decision. I don't do
personal.
that. I believe it's a very personal decision. What I do tell young couples is that's something you need to pray on and you need to believe. I know that there's.
But as a Christian, why not just tell them no? You should wait.
Because it's the reality, right? The reality of it is.
But you don't have to go along with the reality.
No, I don't go along.
You do agree that it's wrong to have sex before marriage, right?
I don't, again, that's a very personal thing. You ask me, because like I said, that's a decision that you and your partner need to make. And
partner.
Partner.
That's gay.
No, that's gay the way you define it. But yeah, no, I tell young couples, I go, you need to be very aware of the consequences and what you're doing. Now, I believe, obviously that sex is a very important part of marriage, and
Right.
the way we personally believed is once we made that commitment to one another, is that, that we need to grow sexually as well as one another in our marriage, because, because we know that sex is such a huge part of why couples get divorced and finances and all that kind of thing. So for us, that made sense. I knew there was
You
a
do
level of
realize that when you have sex before marriage, it separates you from God. It put you in a sense of darkness. You become very emotional and addicted to the woman. You now need her, can't live without her, can't live with her. It really just puts you in a sense of emotional darkness. Whereas if you waited and got married and had sex, then you could work it out under the umbrella of marriage, knowing that God is with you. But if you're doing it without marriage, then God is not with you. Satan is your father. So you do know that, right?
Well, again, I think that's your particular interpretation of how you see it. I don't
You don't agree with that?
I don't necessarily agree with all of that. I do believe that.
Do you notice that once you had sex before you got married, you had sex out of wedlock, then you become more needy, emotional need for the woman, you wanted more sex, and just one thing led to another.
No, and again, I might be an anomaly in this, and I tell other folks, as well, and I can definitely see how that happens with some folks.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So from that perspective, I do agree. I can see that. Again, for me, I think it's a little bit different. I believe that God brought me this person. I knew she was going to be my wife. I knew that this.
That's
was
why
going
you
to
had
happen.
sex with her before marriage.
I wouldn't say that was the reason why, but I mean, I
Would
think
God
that was.
have wanted you to have sex with her before marriage?
I don't know what God would have wanted, for that. But
What
I mean,
kind of Christian are you? You go
Well,
on
again-
to your wife for godly
but
advice.
again, remember now, I believe God brought me this person, and I believe that there was things we needed to work on before we made the marriage union. But I was very committed to this person, and she was very committed to me. So under that construct, things progress, and and that's what happened. But again, I don't know that, and especially nowadays when I talk to these young kids who are getting engaged in 18 months and stuff like that,
Right.
that's part of the counseling, is especially if there is sex involved. I'm like, well, hey, have you done the legwork first, with this person, or is this just somebody you believe you're in love with but not really love?
Do you ever recommend to them not to have sex until
Oh,
marriage?
absolutely, yeah.